On this week's episode of the Autohaus podcast, your friend said there was a lot of parts availability for these cars. That was true in 1992?
Oh, yeah. I mean, more then than now. I mean, TRD used to be in Gardena in California. And then I used to call them like almost on a weekly basis, asking them for advice. And, practically everything you could possibly do to a 4G engine. It was in a catalog, and they used to stock all the parts. So you could buy them. Yeah, back then. So I would be asking like, oh yeah, if I get dual carburetors, can I run a turbo with it? And ask like stupid questions like that.
This is the Autohaus podcast. I have another guest from Southern California. Could you say your name and give yourself a short introduction?
Sure. Okay. My name is Steve Nakamura. I'm from Southern California, San Gabriel Valley to be exact. I was born and raised here. And let's see, I own an AE86 Corolla, an FRS, and a daily driver, my Lexus. And that's about it, I guess. I don't know what to say, but yeah.
So, pretty interesting. I've had a handful of people actually request you to be on the podcast.
Oh, really? I can imagine who.
And I have to roll through the DMs to find out why, but did you do something like groundbreaking back in the early days of Corollas that we should know about?
I don't know about groundbreaking, but I mean, I've been in the Corollas for a long time, I guess, if that's something. But other than that, I just kind of followed along. I don't know. I don't know if you know something I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, did you have hands in like early Formula Drift or anything like that?
No, I just when drifting first started getting popular here, I used to go to the events and kind of followed along and participated in like the first drift days that were in Irwindale, from back then, and competed in Drift Show Off, the very first one.
Okay.
When Koguchi came here the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, just kind of like was just here for it all, I guess.
Pretty interesting. So typically I'll do some background homework on guests, and sure enough, like every single interview you've had, you've been a pretty humble and quiet guy. So
oh yeah. I mean, I don't know much to talk about, I don't think. I just enjoy cars, and I just go with the flow kind of.
Another interesting thing, especially in the Corolla circle, so there's an old 3-6 Mafia album called Most Known Unknowns, and
okay.
And the point of that is, like, I feel like you're one of those guys where, like, a lot of people know you, but don't really know who you are.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's kind of weird, huh? I mean, like, I've been in this so long that it's all the people have changed. The cars stay the same, but the people changed. So it's kind of interesting to see that it still has so much momentum as it does now.
So exactly what year did you start in the Corolla or even drift scene, whichever one came first?
Let's see, when I was in high school, like I was thinking about buying a car, and then all my friends at the time, they were all in the cars already, and I wasn't, I didn't know anything about cars, so I just was looking at anything. And then they're like, oh yeah, you should get a Corolla GTS, like 85 Corolla GTS, because it has an engine, the 4AG engine, and it has so much potential. And then I was like, oh, okay, I might look into that. And then I didn't know what they were talking about at the time. I was like into skateboarding in high school, and I just wanted a car to get around. And and then they're just like, yeah, you should get that car. They have so many parts for it. I'm like, okay. So then I started looking around and like photo buys and stuff, because I really wanted, at the time I was like, I want a Supra back then.
Yeah.
And I wanted an 85 Supra.
Oh, interesting. I was about to say either Mark III or Mark IV, but you're going all the way back. Mark II Supra.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Well, I don't want to date myself, but this is like in 1992
Okay.
or
Okay.
before 1992.
Mm-hmm.
And then so my dad actually bought a brand new Ford Corolla at Longo Toyota back then.
Wow.
And so I was in the lot with them, and I was just looking at the used cars. I was like, oh, I really want this car. They had actually had 85, 86, up to like, 88 Supras on the used car lot back then. So I was like, oh yeah, I want this car. And I was telling my dad, and he's like, oh, no, that's too expensive. So I was like, but I didn't have money, so I was like, oh, all right. So then, actually, after I graduated high school, I saved some money, and I was able to, actually purchase a car. So I was looking through the auto buys. I was like, oh yeah, Supras are too expensive. So then I found and I remembered what my high school friends were telling me about an 85 Corolla GTS. So I actually found a few in the auto buys. There was no internet back then, right? No forums or anything. So it was all like printed in like these weekly magazines, like print magazines that you'd pick up for free at 7-Eleven. So I found a few in there. So at first I found one that was like, it was actually said it was a black coupe. I was like, oh, cool. I want a coupe and I want a black car. So then when I went to the dealer, it turned out it was a silver hatchback. I was like, oh, well, and I drove it. And then I go, oh, yeah, it runs really good. So I ended up buying that. And that was like in 1992. And from there, it's just been into them ever since.
One thing you mentioned earlier was that your friend said there was a lot of parts availability for these cars. That was true in 1992?
Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, more then than now. I mean, TRD used to be in Gardena in California,
Oh, wow.
off,
Okay.
off Western. They had a whole building, and then I used to call them like almost on a weekly basis, asking them for advice and asking them for parts and things like that, and how things would work if I did this or that. And they had a whole catalog of, practically everything you could possibly do to a 4G engine. It was in a catalog, and they used to stock all the parts.
Oh,
So you
wow.
could buy them. Yeah, back then. So I would be asking like, oh yeah, if I get dual carburetors, can I run a turbo with it? And ask like stupid questions like that. And then they talk to me. You just there's no like chats or forums or no way to communicate through the computer back then. So you'd call them on the phone or go to the office and try to talk to somebody.
And could you buy parts directly at the TRD office? Like, did they have like a storefront or something?
Kind of, but you could order parts directly from them. You go to the counter and then you can order parts or call in and tell them what parts you want and things like that.
Yeah, this really intrigues me because I've heard of before. I'm friends with the owners of a local shop, a Toyota clinic, and they said back in Hawaii, they remember the day when they had just the TRD headers up, in the dealership wall, and you could buy TRD parts like that.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah. I mean, that's probably like in the late 80s or early 90s, right? They
yeah,
used to do that. Yeah, I think when the Toyota Corolla GTS first came out, they were offering all those parts from the dealer, right?
yeah. And then we have another customer that he went to the dealership and flipped through the paper catalog and bought the TRD N2 kit at a US dealer. Like the dealer could order that kit for him.
Oh yeah, there's another shop. It was called I think they're still around, but I don't know if they have a storefront anymore. Called Toy Sport. So and they were in Gardena also, and they had everything for Toyotas. I mean TRD, everything, and then they used to, they had a pretty big storefront, and then they would offer all those parts also.
Yeah, this makes a lot more sense to me looking at, like older publications where, you'd see this Corolla with like TRD manifold, all this stuff that's unobtainable now. And
Oh yeah.
it makes a lot more sense if there was like TRD headquarters right there in SoCal.
Oh yeah, yeah. I can't remember because I bought a TRD header brand new back then, like in the early '90s. I can't remember if I got it from I'm pretty sure I bought it from TRD Direct, not or Toy Sport, one of those. I mean, I bought it brand new back then,
Oh, wow. Yeah, yeah.
They're all readily available. They were like, it was like not even rare. It was just, they had everything.
So what happened to this TRD headquarters?
They just closed. I don't know what year they closed down, but I guess they just stopped operating. I don't know what year it was. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure, but Yeah, I think even Toy Sport, they closed eventually, and a lot of the shops started. Like HKS used to be here too. Like they used to have a corporate office here, and our distribution office actually, I should say, and Blitz and Apex, they all were in the early days. They were all pretty big at one point. They all kind of went away. you know, kind of sad, but the way it goes, I guess.
What do you think happened that made all these, big aftermarket companies have to close up shop?
Yeah, I'm not sure the exact reason, but I want to say that right after the first Fast and the Furious movie came out,
Mm-hmm.
like everything kind of blew up in the industry. You know what I mean? Like kind of good, kind of bad. But I mean, it got really mainstream. So then all of a sudden you had um, these companies from China come in, and they started manufacturing more and more things because it was the popular thing to do. So that
Mm,
kind of squeezed out the legit companies because they were cheaper, and then people didn't really know, the quality between the two because they were kind of like it was new to them too. So I think that kind of, people stopped actually demanding the quality parts in favor of the
mm,
cheaper parts. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So I'm not sure. You'd probably have to ask someone who actually worked in the industry, but it wasn't because of a lack of interest in the import car scene.
yeah,
Because I mean that kind of got crazy. You know, after
yeah,
that
yeah.
after that movie came out, it's
So talk about the early days of owning a Corolla in SoCal. What was that like?
um when I bought my first car, the first my first Corolla. So at the time I bought it, it was like a 7-year-old car, and then everyone was like starting to get into Hondas more, like Civics and Integras. So everyone used to tell me, "Oh yeah, you got an old school car." I was like, "Oh okay," and I was like, but now I look back, I'm like, it was only a 7-year-old car. How could you call it old school? But yeah, like that was I guess things were moving pretty fast back then. So that was like the mentality. They're like, oh yeah. And then back then, the scene was solely drag racing and street racing. So that's why people actually started getting into Hondas because they're easier to make faster back then. So then I was like, oh yeah, I gotta make my car faster. Like this is me being a kid back then. So then I actually went to a shop called Promotion, and they were in Montebello, but they were one of like probably the only car shops in the area that sold parts for Japanese imports. And they had like a really small little storefront on the second floor and a little, mini mart. But I mean, and then they ended up becoming like a huge distribution center later on. And I think now, have you heard of Launch Distribution?
Oh yeah, of
Yeah,
course.
they're the guys who started Promotion way back then,
Mm,
like in the late '80s even. So like parts, HKS parts, and every like JDM parts back then. Like they bring stuff in like that, wheels and things like that. And let's see. So then I told them, oh, I want to turbocharge my Corolla, and like, oh, okay. You should talk to Herman at Drag. Have you heard of Drag? They did like a bunch of turbochargers for Hondas back in the day. I don't know if you ever heard of it. It's pretty long time ago.
no, I'm not familiar with the company. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, I mean, early '90s they were turbocharged. They started turbocharging Hondas with big turbos, and that was like back then that was pretty unheard of because back then, everyone was, and even in Japan, they were sticking to like small turbos on 4 cylinders, like especially Hondas. So he was kind of like starting to do like more big power bolt-on turbocharged Honda kits. So then they put me in touch with him. So he built me a custom turbo manifold, and he said, "Oh yeah, this turbo worked probably the best." He gave me like a T3 Garrett turbocharger, and then I kind of pieced the piping together, and then the car ran pretty good. Probably the first night.
Oh, first night.
Yeah, I mean we got it to run. Figured out the airflow meter, how to run it, and everything, so that would actually idle and run decent. And then like I remember taking it out, and shifting to the second, and then the tires were just peeling out all of a second. I was like, wow, this is pretty good. But then after that day, it was like all downhill. Started like smoking and things like that. And I mean, it ran good. It was just, it didn't last very long.
Oh man.
But I mean, it was fast for me back then. It was a pretty big difference. But then it wasn't very reliable, I guess. And I figured that out, pretty quickly. So then, well, I mean, I had the car actually for a year before I started, before I decided I wanted to do that. So then I said, oh yeah, I don't think this is a good way to go if I want to have a really fast car. So I ended up taking off, and I took off the turbo kit, and I was like trying to sell the car after that. And I was driving around, I was like, wow, I think it's funner without the turbocharger.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I was like, wow, the car sounds so good, and I was like really enjoying it. But then, I was like, my friends and I were all starting to get more into like drag racing, and Battle of the Imports started back then. Like the very first Battle of the Imports happened, and then so I just decided I wanted to get a different car after that. So I sold the Corolla, and I bought an Integra, like a DA Integra, and then I turbocharged that car right away, and then I had that Integra was turbocharged, and it was crazy fast for me. But then I decided I wanted another Corolla. I was like, oh, I got another one. And then I went to Okinawa, and I saw one on the street. Actually saw a couple on the street just driving by. I was like, oh, that looks so cool. and then I saw one, and I was like, we're at some random place. I was like in a restaurant, and then there was one parked in the parking lot. I was like, oh, yeah, I should get another one. So when I got back, then I started looking for one, and then my friend happened to be selling his. So I got it really cheap, must have paid like $800 for it. And from there, it was a coupe. So that was my second car. And then from there, I sold that one. Well, actually, and then I found a hatchback, my current hatchback. Yeah, and then I bought the current hatchback. So I was like, oh, I can't have all these cars. So I sold the coupe to my friend. And then that's the hatchback I have now, that I bought in 1999.
So the hatchback you have now, you've had since 1999.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And then in between then I've had a lot of guys they say they have 10 Corollas in their they've owned multiples, but I've only owned 4. So my first hatchback, 2 coupes, and this current hatchback I have right now. So yeah. I mean, I've had cars in between too, I've got to experience different cars. I had a G35 sedan manual that was really fun. I had a Mazda 5 at one point. Mazda 5, yeah, the van. I had that for a little bit. That was my favorite car. And yeah, I mean, I've also had a DC2 Integra. I got one of those at one point.
Yeah, in one of your previous interviews, I actually pulled out this quote that I wanted to talk about. It looks like in that interview you said, it's good to own and experience different types of cars. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
I mean, yeah, different cars can offer different, it's just, you shouldn't just stick to one car. I mean, you should at least experience, what different cars have to offer. Like the Integra was really, I mean, that car was really cool, but I just ended up coming back to the Corolla, and it made me appreciate it that much more.
Yeah, I'll give you some context. So someone else that's big in the Corolla community in SoCal, do you know Danny? Swing Biz Danny?
Yeah, I've heard of him, and I had very little contact with him through DMs because I was actually looking for someone to rebuild my differential. But then we kind of lost touch. But yeah, I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll quote something he said. He said that it's good to experience different types of cars for him so that he understands, and I'm going to misquote him a little bit, what he can take from other cars and what's missing in, you know, because he does Corolla products, what's missing in the Corolla products. And he gives him like a fresh perspective to come back into the Corolla scene.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, you can really learn from driving different cars, like probably what's missing from it. I don't know, you know? I think that's probably what he kind of meant when he said that. So, I mean, he got another Corolla, right? I mean, he still has one, or
No. Part of the reason he said that was he sold that Levin race car.
mm-hmm.
And then in between, I think he had like a E46 M3. He has a new CTR right now. He has a S2000, I think. So
Okay.
but still out there making Corolla products.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have a Corolla all through, all the way through up until now. I like I said, I had an Integra for a while, and then also another Integra, and I had an S2000 for a really short time. That was like that car was great. I mean, like, have you ever driven an S2000?
Of course, yeah. That's one of those like benchmark or greatest cars of all time for
Yeah,
me.
I mean, you don't even have to be racing it, and just with the top down and driving down the street, you're like, wow, this is like, it just gives you that feeling. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was like, wow, this car's really good. But then, I was gonna have a kid at the time. I was like, oh yeah,
Oh.
I can't have this anymore. You know, what are we gonna do? So the S2000 actually turned into the Mazda 5.
So one thing interesting about your current roster of cars is you have I hate saying this, the old and the new 86 chassis.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
yeah, the FRS, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And I hate to call it the old 86 chassis, right? But
Well, I mean, it's called Ace. They called it the 86 in Japan, so
and I think that's how you first came on my radar was the Speed Hunters article where you put the four lug Watanabes on your FRS.
Oh yeah, yeah. Okay, I think I remember that. That was from like one of the Toyota Scion Toyota festivals or something like that, right? Something they did at the Toyota headquarters, I think. I don't remember, but yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
I guess talk about that because I've owned both chassis at the same time as well. What has your experience been owning both chassis?
Well, they're both totally different cars, you know.
Yeah, I
I
would
don't, I,
totally agree
I,
with that
I don't,
one.
I don't think. I mean, they're both good in their own ways, but you can't say that they're the same. But I like both for sure. Would I rather be driving my Corolla? Probably, but practicality wise, I'd have to go with FRS,
Mm.
especially now since they're getting so rare that it's almost scary to drive a Corolla on the street. You know what I mean? Like you can't just take it to I mean, you could, but you can't just take it to the store to run errand. I guess I do sometimes anyway, but you always have to be fast because you don't know if your car's going to be outside by the time you come back. You know what I
Oh
mean?
no.
But and worrying about other drivers actually on the street, because I mean, if you get hit, that's it. It's pretty much totaled, right? So, but other than that, plus air conditioning. That's what kind of that's how I discovered you. But yeah, I mean, but when I used to go to the track, I would take I would try to take the FRS, drifting or just doing little things. I'm like, oh yeah, it's not as fun as the Corolla, you know?
Mm.
Yeah, even though it's like it kind of does what you want it to do, it's like it's not the same feeling, you know? So I'm sure you know that too, right?
Yeah, so everything you said, I completely agree with. Both are very good, but in their own ways. I've heard interviews before where people will compare the new chassis to be like, oh yeah, this is the same driving, I can really feel like the heritage and the same driving feeling, which I totally do not agree with.
Yeah, I mean, an S13 is probably closer than an FRS to an AE86 driving wise, you know?
Mm.
You know what I mean? It's like it's like just totally different. I mean, there's like weird things with the steering and the FRS, and yeah, I mean, I still love that car. You know what I mean?
And then similarly, you saying like, "Oh, I'd rather drive my Corolla." That's what happened to my FRS pretty much because I was competing locally in a time attack with a 8.6 drive challenge, and at my everyday or on my weekends, like I'd rather take the Corolla than take the FRS.
Oh yeah,
But on the other side of that is the drive to and from the track is far more comfortable in that FRS, so I really enjoyed that.
oh yeah. But then like I remember taking the FRS to a few events, and I was like, I get there, start driving, I'm like, oh, I should have brought my Corolla, you know. But then there's times I drive the Corolla, and I'm like driving home, I'm like, oh, I should have brought the FRS. You know what I mean? It's kind of like a trade off. Ultimately, I want to just trailer the Corolla to events if whenever I start going back again. That's like the plan, but I don't know when that'll be actually.
Did you used to do like track or drift days in your Corolla, the hatchback right now?
Oh yeah, that's the one that I started. Yeah, that I got in 1999. So around then, that's when the drift days started happening, right? The first drift days at Irwindale, I think around that time, 2000 and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So then I bought the Corolla, and then I used to go with my friends to like the Toge, like near where I live, and we used to go like almost every other night. Not drifting, just drive through, race through the canyons.
Mm-hmm.
And then they started doing the drift days, so then I started going to those. So it's kind of where I started, I guess.
So what's the current spec of your car right now, and how has that changed over the years?
Let's see, for the longest time, that car was I just had like an HKS and filter and HKS 256 cams and the header, just like a regular exhaust, like a generic exhaust and suspension. I'm like, do you want me to tell you exactly what I had back then, like suspension wise and everything, or?
Or so right now, I know what's most intriguing for me is that you have FCR carburetors on the car.
Oh, currently,
So
yeah.
yeah, so I'm trying to think like throughout this progression, like did you ever go forced induction again? Have you ever experienced like a swapped Corolla?
No, 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 I like as soon as I took off the turbo, I was like, oh, I don't think I'll ever, if I ever bought one again, I wouldn't turbocharge it again, even though it was like really fast, like a turbocharged Corolla really fast, and I just said, oh no, I just want to. Then I started getting more into what they were doing in Japan. So that from a certain point, I was just like, oh, I'm just gonna use them as like a benchmark to what I'm gonna do with my car. From then on, like I think more when drifting started getting popular. So I never swapped the engine either. Let's see, well, in this current car, I remember I was driving to some event, and then the timing belt actually broke a tooth. So I was, I thought I bent a valve and everything. So I swapped. My friend actually had just recently crashed his Corolla, but he had a 20 valve silver top block with a 16 valve head on it. So he sold me that like really cheap. So that ended up in the car up until like I think I put that in 2002 or 3 is when I swapped for that engine, and it lasted all the way up until like this year.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I mean it was like leaking oil and getting blow by, but I was still driving it like that. But it lasted, and then I thought I spun a rod or something or did something, but it ended up being like one of the clutch cover bolts like backed out and got wedged in the starter tooth. So I thought my engine was seized. Yeah, at first I was like, oh, seized my engine. And I took it all apart and it ended up being that. I was like, oh, so stupid. But I mean, I didn't touch that engine for like how many years, I just ran it. So it had a good run, I guess. Then I had the original, the 16 valve that I bent a valve in, like, back then. So I just kind of rebuilt that one in my garage, and that's what's in the car right now, currently, with the FCRs. I got bigger cams and things like that. Just did all the valve seals because that was the problem area, and just put new rings on them. That's it.
I know every time I'm in SoCal, one thing that's really apparent for me is that I feel like the level of build quality for Corollas is really high. And then the other thing too, it's very, you could say purist style that idealized Japanese style Corolla.
Okay.
Let's see. How would I say this? Like the caliber of cars, like all the arrows real, all the cars are, aesthetically polished. There's modifications that are like really Japanese, such as you have FCR carbs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's how would I say it? I feel like in NorCal, it's more of this like modern USDM style.
That's interesting. Yeah, I don't. It's hard for me to know because, yeah, I'm not sure actually. I mean, because like for my car anyway, a lot of the parts I have on, well, except for the FCR carbs that I actually got from Jacob. You know Jacob, right?
Oh yeah, okay,
Yeah,
that
he
makes
helped me
more
get
sense.
those. Yeah, he helped me get those. I was like, oh, thank you. But I mean, as far as like my arrow, like I have a good line front bumper on the car right now that actually got back in 2002. I bought that bumper, so I've had it ever since. And I don't know if there's a real big difference actually,
Mm,
majority wise. I mean, there are a few that I know. I think you're thinking about a few cars here that have like full authentic aero and everything, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like more of the, yeah. But I mean, I think the majority of cars aren't really like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know some of the SoCal guys will when I tell them that too, they'll say like, "Hey, the grass is always greener because we really admire your guys' cars too." So,
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, like I don't see the caliber being any higher here than you know what I mean over there. It's just because we're all into cars and we just do what we can do, right?
mm.
So yeah.
I know I've asked you a lot of questions, and one thing we can circle back on is that I guess from, if I understand this correctly, I first came on your radar from the AC work I was doing on for Corollas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's awesome.
Oh, thank you. So, are you trying to put AC back in your Corolla?
Um, I was just looking at options because I really didn't want to put everything back in, like all the factory parts. So I was
Mm,
looking for alternatives, something that was like maybe a little lighter, but and a little, you know, because I don't know how hard it is to find all those parts now, like all the
mm.
original lines and condenser. And so I was just like trying to figure out different ways to do it. So, but I mean, maybe later on down the line, but it was like when it was at a time when it was really hot here.
Oh.
So I was like, dude, I gotta do something because I really want to drive the car more, and it's super hot, and there's no way, you know. So that's why I just started searching around and looking for, different alternatives on how I could do that.
Yeah, I know you left a comment about if this could run an electric AC compressor. Do you know anything more about having an electric compressor? Because I know a few people have asked me that.
No, I mean, I just thought, how do hybrid and electric cars have AC? So I started researching, like, oh yeah, they just use an electric compressor. So
Mm,
I was thinking, but then I started thinking, I wonder if that would draw too much amperage from the alternator and things like that, or if you'd have to upgrade your alternator or whatever. I was was just thinking, oh, it would save some space, I think.
Yeah,
You,
possibly.
you could like mount that anywhere. You know that you can mount the compressor underneath the car if you wanted to, or it didn't have to be in the engine bay. And I was just like, oh, that might be interesting, but you know, I don't know if I'll pursue that, or
Mm.
maybe you will.
The kit I'm trying to make has been on hiatus for a while, but I mean, did you have any questions about like where it's at, development of the kit, any questions like that?
Yeah. I was wondering if you were gonna actually sell a complete kit that would bolt in.
Yes. So the answer is yes. That is the end goal, is to have a complete drop-in AC kit for the AE86.
Wow, that'd be great.
Yeah.
I mean, that includes like the heater and everything, right? I mean, it's a full climate control unit, right?
Yeah, so literally everything inside the cabin and in the engine bay all gets replaced with brand new components.
Wow, it's really cool. Wow, that'd be great. I mean, you don't have a ballpark figure on how much it would cost, right? Not yet.
I do have a ballpark, but we can talk offline about that one.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah. I do have a ballpark, but
I'm sure I'm sure it'd be pricey, but worth it in the end,
yeah.
you know?
Yeah, well, the thing for me is like just like everything else, if I can sell enough of these, enough quantity, then
Mhm.
that price difference translate down to the consumer, right? Like I can get the price down if I sell more of these kits.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. And I mean, like, how do you see the Corolla market? Because I don't. It's hard for me to imagine there being more demand later on down the line as the
Mm.
chassis become fewer and fewer. But like I have no idea because I'm not in the industry, or I'm not a parts maker or anything. Or what do you see it getting bigger or smaller? Or
Yeah, so I'm very fortunate that for a few reasons. So we work on a lot of AE86s at the shop. So I see pretty much the spectrum. And then also because we share the shop with Battle Garage RS. So
okay, cool.
yeah, both of us kind of like feed off each other and learn a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say restoration is where the market's heading right now. And yeah, and I'll tell you, the most common things I hear, or the most common requests I get from customers, is to put creature comforts back into the car.
Yeah. Because I don't know if you follow Keiichi Tsuchiya's YouTube channel.
I don't, but I follow Tech Arts. I know Tech Arts is putting AC back and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, was it Tech Arts channel? Maybe, yeah. But he recently put AC back into his Corolla, right? So I think more people are gonna start to want to do those kind of things in the future.
A couple of reasons I'm thinking is, first of all, the owners of these cars getting older,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
then the prices of these cars exploding, which means that people who you can argue like are more established in life, like have an established career, are now the ones buying these cars.
Hmm.
And it's more likely that, this new type of buyer values the creature comforts of these cars a lot more.
Yeah, because I mean the value of the 1972 Corollas are skyrocketed, right? Like the old T Corollas, the mangoes and stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting. This is all like a trickle down effect where I mean, in my mind, I think like a Toyota 2000 GT went for like a million plus on in auction, and that just trickles down to like everything else in the Toyota lineup, especially those classic and heritage cars.
Yeah. So I was talking to some guy. He actually he restores he has a couple of T27s. Big Mike Nunez. You know who that is?
Oh yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, because I was talking to him at a car show, and he was telling me, yeah, the next, he said right now these are really in demand. Like collectors really want these, like his, because he has a T
Hmm.
27, I think, and he said, yeah, but the next car is going to be the A86. He thinks that's going to be the
Mm.
next one that's really going to be sought after, in the future. I was like, oh, really? So I was like, really? Oh, okay. So what should I do? I mean, do I keep driving at the track, or do I just like kind of You know what I mean?
Oh,
Yeah, because I haven't been to track in a long time, so I mean, you know, I have kids now, and I don't have time to do any of that stuff anymore. But you know, later on, hopefully, I can do it again. But you know, but I'm just like, yeah, it's kind of, you know, I want to enjoy the car, but you know, if it gets to that point.
TE is really hot in NorCal right now. And
Oh, really?
yeah, and I think a couple reasons, like the later TE is basically a AE86 underpinnings.
All right, right, yeah,
Yeah, and
83, yeah, 82, 83, yeah, from yeah, uh-huh.
yeah, and then also because AE86 Corolla has always been priced so high, TE's the more affordable chassis.
Yeah. I mean, I've been looking for one, and they seem pretty rare also that that
Oh,
that year. Yeah.
yeah. Everyone in NorCal bought them all up already. Sorry.
Oh,
No, I'm
okay.
kidding.
Okay. Is that what happened? Yeah. Yeah. Because I was like, yeah, I want to get like a sedan, but then they're all gone,
Oh,
or even a more rare station wagon, right?
yeah.
Yeah, but they got all bought up. I guess.
Yeah, it's funny. Like all these cars that were once deemed undesirable, like a four-door TE that was grandpa's car, now like the young drift guy really desires that car now.
Oh yeah, like look what happened to the Cressida, right?
Oh, yes, yes, yeah, yeah.
Dude, we should just like be like, oh, that's just like an old person's car, back especially in the '90s. We're like, oh yeah, whatever. But now it's yeah, they're hot right now, right?
Well, it's interesting. During my era, the Cressida was popular because it had the 7M in it. So everyone knew that also the Mark III had the 7M.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so those later Cressidas have been I think have always had some popularity, but like you had to be in the know. But then now, things like the advent of the internet, like now they've come into the limelight.
Oh yeah, I
Or like
mean, you
everyone
can't
knows
even
the secret
find.
now.
Yeah, you can't even find one. Yeah, I think the whole point was like it was just rear-wheel drive. You know what I mean? Like they're just anything rear-wheel drive is gonna be popular right now, I guess. So yeah, I was actually looking for one at one point too. Like before I bought my G35, I was like telling my friend, yeah, I'm looking for a Cressida, and it's like no, just buy a G35, a brand new one. I was like, oh, okay. So yeah, it's kind of that was the end of my Cressida search, I guess. So I think you work for Annex Suspension, right?
Yes.
Yeah, because I mean, actually, I was thinking about upgrading my suspension because I have JIC suspension from like I don't know how long.
Wow, I didn't even know
So,
GIC had a Corolla
oh
application.
yeah, 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 they did. And from like early 2000s, I think I bought that suspension. So I mean, it's just the front, and then the rear I have a Gab Gymkhana shocks with TRD springs.
Also very, very of the period.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I've been running that for a very long time. So I was thinking of upgrading. So I'm sure it's pretty obvious, but I want to ask if the suspension upgrade would make a big difference on everything, handling wise and things like that.
Yeah, so one thing I like to emphasize for the Corolla application for Annex is that there's pretty much a setup to suit you. And what I mean by that is whether you'd prefer like the traditional divorce setup, if you'd like a true rear, there's also a motorsports application if you have a dedicated Corolla that's your drift car, or you know
Okay.
yeah, we sponsor Josh Iroku. That's both his are, his dedicated time attack cars.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. And I like it because it's another one of those like modern improvements for the chassis.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean it's been so long since I like bought suspension for that car.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's been like huge improvements, technology wise.
Yeah. And I think just for the AE86, only recently has it really come into the limelight or like mainstream and pop culture again. But for a while there was a little bit of a lull where people knew it was a popular chassis, but not everyone knew about the car yet.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And during that long kind of like lull, I think the industry really forgot about this car too. So, I mean, honestly, there's only like two companies I can think of that have really put the development time into this chassis.
Mm-hmm.
And I I hate to say it, like everything else, like we're starting to see this a lot with golden era Hondas. It's
Mm-hmm.
like everything's either really outdated or you know not quite
Yeah, not the
that.
quality, right?
Yeah, the quality is really not there.
Mm-hmm.
Or the third option is it's a outrageously like pointy tip of the Spectrum $4,000 or $5,000 multi-way adjustable coilover. There's no
You're
like
right.
middle.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Because I mean, I think KW just recently released suspension for the Corolla, right? Like within the or they're going to, or they did years ago. Yeah, I mean, it didn't come out yet though, did it?
It's interesting. They made like a big deal out of it. Like they made a Tech Arts a distributor or something,
Right,
and
right.
then it kind of fell off, right? Like it kind of got quiet.
Yeah, I kind of didn't hear anything about it anymore. I was like, oh, pricing or what's going on?
Oh yeah, like they had it like front and center at a Tokyo Auto Salon last year, and then yeah, it's been really quiet so far.
And actually, I was looking for a header, I think. What header are you running in your car right now?
We're a big supporter of Martellius.
Okay, yeah, I was looking into that
Yeah,
actually.
yeah. So from what it sounds like, your engine spec, Martellius offers again like a header option to suit the car. So starting with a Group A, that's if you have a street car or like a mildly tuned car.
Hmm.
I think Group A they rate it like up to 180 wheel horse. So Group
Okay.
A is still like a really good header.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And then there's the next step up is a XL. So if you have like a 7A or like big cams or head or engine head work.
Right.
And then the top tier is the R1, which is like a motorsports only, like 300 duration cam header.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So are those like in stock, or do you have to like, are those made to order?
They are in stock, but they have been so popular that Battle Garage cannot keep them in stock.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And Martellius is hand welding them, so that's what's tough for us. It's like because it's such a good option and because they're so popular, we can't get them and they can't make them fast enough.
Right. Well, I
Yeah.
mean, because there's not really a like a there's not really many people making a header for a left-hand drive currently.
Ah, that's the other thing is that because Martellius is a 4-2-1 instead of a 4 into 1.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so there's not even left-hand drive. There's not many companies making a 4-2-1
Mm-hmm.
header, which is will give you like the low end. You won't lose your low or mid range.
Right. Yeah, because there's really no header choices out there. I mean, there's eBay and you know, and I think Tech Arts, right?
That was the other one. Was last year at SEMA, Fujitsu had a left-hand drive header at the Cusco booth that they
Hmm.
said they were gonna put to the U.S. market, and then that kind of got quiet too because
Yeah.
after that, I know they did like a Fujitsu Tech Arts collab header that was
You're right.
also
Yeah,
left-hand
that's what
drive.
I was waiting for.
Yeah,
I'm like, oh, where'd it go? It's kind
yeah,
of
and then
not
exactly
around.
this. Yeah, I said the same thing. Like, oh, where'd it go?
Yeah. And then yeah, and Techno Pro Spirit did like a limited run, which kind of went away also, right? They don't make anymore, right?
Man, I'm sorry, I didn't even know Techno Pro Spirits made a Corolla header.
I think they did for a little. I could be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure it was Techno Pro Spirit that did a short run of left-hand drive headers for the US. I can't remember, but I mean, I think they were, but you can't get those. You know what I mean?
On the bright side, because that's one of the bright sides of the Corolla becoming more mainstream, is that now these companies are starting to recognize the chassis, and there have been more options available for us now in terms of parts.
Okay,
Yeah,
it's good to know.
yeah. Like I didn't know if but they're actually making like reproduction body and body panels and bumpers
Oh
now. Yeah.
yeah. That's pretty crazy, actually. It's just now it's a matter of finding a frame though now.
Oh,
Like you could probably get a beat up one, just as long as it has a pretty straight frame. You could just rebuild a new one, right? From the ground up almost.
tough call. Out here in NorCal, even for bare shells, have been going for eye-watering amounts of money. I'm shocked every time I see the price of these.
Yeah, I know. I think for beat up ones, they want like 10 grand or something, right? Like really, really bad ones. I saw one. I was like, oh, I don't want to spend. I mean, maybe if I had the money, I would spend it, but yeah, like I don't know. I mean, you can get an FRS, like like an early model FRS for less than a Corolla now,
Yeah, that's been another common theme is that for sure you can get a decent FRS for a lot less than you can for a not so good Corolla.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so it's like because it used to be back then. The reason why you bought a AE86 Corolla is because it was cheap and it was rear-wheel drive. That was the whole. That was the whole point of that car, you know, back in the early days,
Hmm.
But now it's kind of flipping around.
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
Yeah, because back then they were just kind of like throwaway cars almost, like, especially in Japan. They would just like
Mm.
get them and beat them up, use them as missile cars, and just because they were cheap. But now it's like almost priceless, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So it's just interesting how it kind of turned out that way.
Stephen, I just want to thank you so much again for coming on the podcast. And
Oh yeah, thank you for having me. I mean, I was just like surprised, like really, someone wants me on a podcast? I'm like, I'm just like a nobody here. Yeah,
oh, you say that, but there's there's an extensive amount of interviews and a long history of cars with you. So don't sell yourself short.
Oh, okay. But I mean, like, people are welcome to DM me anytime if they have questions. Don't be afraid. You know.
Awesome. Well, with that being said, would you like to shout out your social? Where can people find you and check out your cars?
Oh yeah, sure. It's STVN Nakamura and on Instagram. But yeah, whatever you need to know. I mean, I'm not like an expert. I know you had like Talk On, and I think you said you were gonna try to get Alex Pfeiffer on and all those like.
Oh,
really-
try. I've
yeah,
been trying for Alex for a long time now.
yeah. They're like super knowledgeable on the AE6 chassis, so I mean, they know everything.
That's it for this week's episode. If you like what you've heard, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And please leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, as reviews really help support us. You can do it straight from your desktop. Don't even need an Apple device. This is Autohaus Z. Thanks for all the support, you guys.